So here we are at the next stage in developing this game. Now we've got these meteorites that come down the screen, and we've got a nice spacecraft that moves left and right, has a little bit of inertia to it as it goes, and we can shoot some bullets. There go our bullets at the moment. Now one of the problems is that the bullets don't hit the meteorites, which I think is going to have to be the thing we look at next. So at the moment, as you can see, we have around about 3 meteorites on screen, bullets flying up, but nothing else going on. So let's see if we can work out what we need to do to get this to work. Now, if you remember, we have 2 tables that contain our objects that we're going to deal with. We have one to do with bullets and one to do with rocks. So here's our bullets one, okay, and here's our rocks. And each of these functions adds a new rock to the rock table. And because of the way Pico-8 works and the fact that we can actually have a function within the table, the rocks and the bullets are able to both draw themselves and update themselves. Now, there's no really easy way around this. One way or another, we have to go through all the bullets looking at all the rocks, or all the rocks looking at all the bullets. And ultimately, you're going to have to go through quite a lot of things. Now, if we look at our game here, if I run it again, what have we got? 8, 9, 10 bullets on screen, 3 rocks coming down the screen. Even if those rocks split into smaller ones, we're talking 6 rocks or something like that. It's not a major problem either way. This is not a game that is going to be so desperately difficult to keep fluid, if you like, in comparison to maybe some sort of AAA game, which I very much doubt you would be programming in Pico-8 anyway. So we can allow ourselves a little bit of leeway in how we approach this. And the key to it, sorry, wrong bit, the key to it is going to be down here in the update cycle, where we update the various objects. Okay, because what we can do in here in the bullets one is we can go through all the rocks for every bullet and see if there's been a collision between the two. The other option is that when we're in the rocks, we can go through all the bullets to check if there's been a collision between the two. Okay, but I'm going to stick with this one here, and I'll put a little note in here saying check for collision. Okay, so this is going through all the bullets. It's saying for B in all the bullets, update. But what we're also going to do is we're just going to ask a really simple question, which is, has the bullet hit the rock? And to do that, we're going to need a function. So let's make a little function here. And we're going to call it hit. And it's going to need a couple of variables. It's going to need the X and the Y of the bullet, and the X and the Y of the rock, okay, and the width and the height of the rock. The bullet we don't need the width and height of, because if we remember in our bullet code, then it just draws, where are we for the bullet? It just draws a very small sprite. Where are we for the bullets? That's a bullet sprite there. So, well, having said you don't need to do anything about it, it is a 2x2 block. Let's see how we get on. Let's see how we get on with it, just checking for a positional point. And then if that becomes silly, then we'll check it. The rock, on the other hand, is definitely an 8x8 sprite, so we'll need a good collision there. Okay? So this function is going to require those things, and obviously always put the end in. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a sort of hitbox method. And for those of you who've not seen it before, the hitbox method basically works like this. If I just get my my drawing pen up. Here is our meteorite, okay, and it looks a bit like this, but we're going to worry about a square. In other words, this square that's around it, which we're going to call our hitbox, okay. And what we're going to do is we're just going to ask the really simple question. Here's our bullet, okay, and we're just going to say, is the bullet inside the hitbox, okay, in one way or another. And so to do that, all we have to do is we know this, the X and the Y of the bullet, and we know this, the X and the Y of the hitbox, and we also know the width and the height of the hitbox. So really we want to find out is x, the x of the bullet, this x, within x to over here, which is x plus width, and is the y within y to y plus height. And if both of those conditions are true, then we know that this object is inside this hitbox. If either of those is not true, then we don't have to worry. So that's what we're going to try and do in some code. Let's see if we can actually get that to work. So to do this, we're going to have to sort of have a nice big chunk of logic for our bits and pieces. Okay, so let's say if x, which is the x of the bullet, is greater than the x of the rock and less than, and x is less than the x of the rock plus the width of the rock. So is that, first of all, the case? Because if that's the case, if I go back to my drawing over here and we get everything up and running, okay, so I'll go back to pink again. So here is our drawing, and here's our rock, and this is x, and this is x plus width. Then we want to be the object that we're testing, our bullet. Let's say our bullet is here. Okay, there's the x of it. It has to be greater than that, and it has to be less than that. Okay, so that's the key. It's got to be greater than the value of x, and it's got to be less than x plus the width. And obviously the same is going to be the case for the y. So if we've got one here and we're looking at its y, this is y there, and y plus height, then it's got to be greater than y but less than y plus height, remembering obviously that height is big down there, small up there. Okay, so we're going to need an or in here as well to try and get these things to work. So if I just get back to my cursor. So that's the first one we want to say. Is it between those? And is the y greater than rock y? And is the y less than rock y plus rock height? Okay. So if all of those things are true, then we can say, I'll just put a little comment in, there has been a collision. Okay, and if there's been a collision, we will return true. And if none of that's happened, then we will return false. Okay, return will quit out of the function. So as soon as we return true, the function is closed and we don't have to worry about this one down here. Okay, so that's our hit function. And so if we come back into here, where were we? Not that one, this one, check for collision. We just want to say this, if hit, okay, so if there's a hit and it's between b.x, b.y, hang on, I'm just going to delete that a second because we need to go for r in all rocks do. Okay, so you can see here how the code is not necessarily optimized in the best way possible, because not only for every time we get a bullet we're going to go through all the rocks, okay, and then after we've done that we're going to go through all the rocks and update them. Now I don't want to put update in here because then I'll be updating the rocks every time we go through a bullet, so I'm just going to have to take the performance hit here of going through the rocks twice, but because there's only 3 rocks, potentially 6, 7, it's not going to have much of an impact in here. Okay, so now I've got reference to both R and B. I can say if hit, so is there a hit, and that's b.x, b.y, and then it's r.x, r.y, okay, because if we have a look in here, the rocks have an x and a y, okay, and the bullets have an x and a y. The rocks do not have a width. I haven't in any way told the rocks how wide they are. So at the moment, I'm just going to put in a hard-coded 8 and 8. Okay. If in future we decide to change something there, I might do it. I'm not a great fan of numbers floating around in things. It tends to mean something's been hard-coded, and that tends to mean that there'll be problems later. But for the time being, I'm happy to have that. So, if there's a hit, what am I going to do if there's a hit? Well, how about we just go del from rocks R. So in other words, we are going to remove from the rocks array rock R. Okay? Let's see what happens if we run it. So at the moment everything's flying. Okay, I'm going to wait till one comes. I'm going to shoot it. Ah, rats. I thought I was going to shoot and all would be good. So, error in line 89. If hit bx, by, rx. Oh, I can see why. I put a little full stop there instead of a comma. So rx, comma, ry, comma 8, comma 8. Let's try that. So I'm going to go again. I'm shooting. Obviously, I'm not hitting anything. Let's try this one. Oh, yes. Did you see it? Disappeared. Gone. Okay. Another one gone. Whoops, don't want to do that one. How accurate is the collision detection? I've seen a few bullets that look like they haven't hit. Okay, but it's not too bad. There we go. So, oh, right. So we definitely have a problem there, don't we? Look at that. All those bullets down that side were just not making contact. So why weren't they? Why will it not? Yeah, it definitely seems to be. You see that? Definitely seems to be that where it's overlapping the left edge. So bullet X, bullet Y. Ah, I know why. It's this stupid sprite. Okay. We're drawing the bullet as though it's a sprite. And so what's happening, of course, is it's this whole sprite is here. The X and the Y is this location there when it draws the sprite. And it's pretty rubbish, really. Okay. So I think we need to go back and fix the object here to not draw a sprite anymore. Okay, I think we'd be better off saying, let's do rect fill, and then we need to put this at self.x, self.y, and then the color is 7 by the looks of things that we seem to be drawing at the moment. Okay, no it doesn't, sorry, it's self.c, self.c. Okay. Oh, well, I've seen stranger effects. That's that's some sort of horrendous death ray or something. It could be useful for the future, but for the time being, that's atrocious. So that's because the rect fill has to go from an XY to an X plus 2 Y plus 2. Let's try that. Okay, that's better. Bit big though. Let's just do plus 1 plus 1. Okay, so now that's better. That seems to be a bit better in terms of collision. Okay, that's good, that's good. We got lots. There are occasional misses, but we'll sort of try and fix those up. I think partly it might be because the bullets are traveling so much faster. Anyway, that's looking pretty good. Next thing to do, I think, is to make these meteorites crack into smaller meteorites. So when they're hit, what's going to happen is, rather than this, where we delete them, we're going to change their status. Okay? And so what will happen is, at the moment, in our rocks, we need to set, let's have another variable that we're going to pass it, okay, which is going to be called stage. Okay? And stage is just going to be a Boolean value. So we've got stage equals stage. And so what this is going to be is this. If they are big, then their stage is going to be true. And if they're small, their stage is going to be false. And the idea is when you hit a meteorite, it's going to split into a smaller one. Okay? Thinking about this, actually, I've got a better idea than stage. Let's make them width. I'll tell you why, because it's going to be useful for the function anyway. So let's just have w equals width. Put a comma in. Okay? Now, we need just to work out which sprite to be drawing. Okay, so I've got this one sprite here. I'm going to draw a smaller sprite now. Okay, which is also going to be a meteorite, but it's going to be smaller, like this. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's probably a little bit big actually. There we go. Let's put a little bit of brightness on the corners, like that. Okay, there we go. Nice. And a little bit of the darker, like that. I think I've overdone that darkness. That one on there. How does that look? Yeah, I think I need to trim off that bit, I think. A bit bright in the middle. And that one. There we go. That looks to me like a relatively interesting looking meteorite. It's small. Okay, so it's the broken one. I don't have to make it 4 actually. I could make it a bit larger like that. Put a little bit more grey there. Like that. And a bit of white. How's that looking? Yeah, that's a better one. Okay, so we just have to remember it's 5 by 5. Okay, so the key here is this. If it's destroyed, we need to do something about it. Okay, so in here, what's going to happen when it's hit? We're just going to set r dot split equals true. Okay, so when it's created, it has a value called split, which equals false. Okay, that's preset. And in our function update self, we say, in fact, it's going to be one of the first things we do. If it splits, so we go if self.split, then. So if we've set the value to split, then what happens is we're going to delete self. Okay. And we're going to add a new rock. So if I just grab the code to add a rock, which is the one up here. Here we go, we're going to add a new rock. Okay, but the key to this new rock, in fact we're going to add 2 new rocks. Okay, the point to these is where are they going to be placed? Okay, so at the moment you've got all these different bits about the rock, x, dx, dy, and so on. Okay, so the x is going to be at self.x. The dx is going to be self.dx. The dy, I'm going to leave as random. Okay. The s, where am I? The sprite is not going to be sprite 8, which is this one. It's going to be sprite 9. So we're going to put sprite 9 in. Okay, and we also have to make sure we put a width in, which is 5. Okay. And we need 2 copies of that. Okay, so Control C, Control V. Now, the only other thing to check on here is this. We don't want this to keep happening. So if self.split and width is 5, sorry, no it's not, and width is 8, then we do this. Okay? Otherwise, in fact, actually, that needn't go in there. We need to say in here, if self.width equals 8, okay, so if the width is 8, we're going to do this. We're going to create 2 new ones. If the width isn't 8, we're not going to do it. We're just going to delete it. So either way, we're going to delete. So it's getting a bit confusing now, but If the self.split tag has been set, so that variable has been set to true, the rock knows it's got to split. If it's an originally sized rock, in other words its width is 8, then the rock generates 2 new rocks in roughly its own location with its own speed, okay, but with a width of 5 now, alright, and a different sprite. Regardless of what happens, we then delete the rock. It disappears. Okay, and that should be the end of that. So we've also now got to make sure that right at the beginning here in add new rocks, after we've added that, we also add the correct width. Let's see what happens. I'm not sure if I've got everything in the right place. Let's just kill them off. Ding, 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 ding. Still can't kill those sideways ones. That's a bit of things to look at. So, that hasn't done it yet, has it? Add new rock. So if we come... Oh, I think it's probably because... Yeah, see, there we are. So we've set our split equals true if there's a hit between it. Now these are going to be r dot width, which I think is just called a w. r.w. Let's just check. Yeah, w is that one. Self.split. So we need, and I've set split there to false if self.split is true. So we're setting it there to true. So if there's a hit, r split is true. And then we come into here for r in all rocks do r update. Okay. So then it should run the update. It should have checked if the split was true. If it was, yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, that's right. If split is true, then split width 8, add new rocks. Otherwise we don't. But either way, we delete rocks self. And that should run. So why is it not? The hit is working. Maybe it just doesn't like this particular function because it doesn't know what it belongs to, but it should do. Let's take this out, Control X. Let's deal with this bit instead in the update loop. Sorry, in the main update loop here. So here we're just going to say this. I'm not going to set a split, it doesn't need it. Okay, so we're not so interested in that. We just need to worry about this then. So if it's no longer self, it's r.w is 8, then we're going to add 2 new ones at rx and rdx, 9 and 5, and then we're going to delete rocks r. Okay, and so that's just going to run it that way instead. So that has created some new ones, but they've been created at the top of the screen. Oh, I know why. So we're almost there. This point, that's the y. We want r.y, and the same here, r.y. Okay. So now we're going to run, shoot that one. Now, there's an interesting one. You can see what's happening now. I'm shooting these rocks. Whee! And they're zooming off the screen at really rather a ridiculous rate. And that's because we don't have a dy for these rocks. We don't ask. Oh yes, dy. And dx. Okay. Rx. So let's go x dx dy. Dy and dy. That would be better. But add new rock always generates them at the top at -10. So we're going to need to add in another one now, which is we're going to have to add a y variable to where the rocks are generated. Okay, so the rocks get generated there. We just need to make sure when we come up here, when we're first playing the game, that we generate a new rock, X, and then this one here is a Y. Okay, so X, it used to be DX, it's not now, it's going to be a Y. So we're just going to put something in here which is going to be -20, let's say, to start the game. And then down here, where it's gone wrong, we want a r dot y, and in here r dot y. Okay, runtime error, y equal because it's not -y, sorry, it's underscore. There we go. Now the only problem I can see here is obviously what happens is the new rocks are placed and then they're easy to shoot. So what we also need to do is whenever we hit a one, we also need to del from bullets R, and I think that will help things quite considerably. So there's the smaller rock. Try this with a single tap of a bullet. Still not really. Okay, so let's make sure, because the dy does work on here, we do want to add dy, but the dy always begins to be 0. That's dy at the very start. We set it there to be 0. But I think what we need to do is give it a slight, because we've now hit it with a bullet, we're going to give it a slight value of dx here. Not very much. Let's give it a 0.5. Okay, and also let's add a random amount to the x location of this bullet so that we don't hit it again. So let's do a random 1 plus minus 0.5. Okay, that will give us a value between -0.5 and 0.5. That's probably, let's do it 3 minus 4 minus 2. That'll give us a couple of pixels either side. In fact, 6 minus 3 will hopefully shift it quite a lot. So I don't need that bracket there. That one, and the same here for there. Okay, and that should just move those bullets slightly. So you can see the bullets flying off there. Another one coming off. That's one coming. So they all fly, they're all flying to the left. I think also probably what I need, we're all getting a velocity in the x direction. Oh, I suppose that's because of this, isn't it? So let's do it minus, let's make that 1, so random 1 minus 0.5. That'll give us variation in both directions. So you can see we're starting to split now into smaller rocks. But it's still too easy. Ah, there's one that split, that's good. It's still too easy to hit those rocks straight away. So I think the final thing to do for this video, before it becomes too long, too late you'll shout, but there we are, is I am going to add into here an invulnerability. Okay, so it's just going to be a T. Oh no, let's inv equals, let's say 10. Okay. And every function self, it's just going to go self.inv minus equals 1. It's just going to drop down, okay? And we'll just make sure it never goes on forever, because actually we don't need to worry about that because they get deleted quite quickly. Okay, so what this does is I'm just going to check if I can shoot it by setting its invulnerability. If its invulnerability is greater than 0, it can't be killed. So in here, if r.inv is greater than 0 and it's a hit, okay, so all I'm doing now is I'm just checking, can it be hit? Oh no, wrong way around. If they make them all completely invulnerable. If r.0 is less, if invincibility is less than 0, sorry, that's better. Hey, there we go. Okay, so bullets flying off all over the place. Now it's getting trickier to shoot things. Okay, so we're still going, shooting. Okay, that's good, that's good. Oh yes, I'm really beginning to like this now. We're starting to get some real effects coming through with these bullets. We can fiddle with that invulnerability stuff quite easily, but you can see now we've got these rocks, they get hit, they disappear. Yep, that's starting to look quite nice. Okay, I am pleased with that. I think what we'll do next time, and I promise there won't be quite such a delay on things before next ones, I think what we'll do for next time is we'll have a bit of an effect when the bullet hits it, so we know it's definitely hit, maybe a bit of dust being blown off or something like that. We'll tweak things like the invincibility and whether that's too long, and we might look at some collisions with the spacecraft itself as well, and maybe start thinking about how we're going to get this game to be a little bit more challenging, and bits and pieces, limited ammo, a few bits and bobs. So there's a few things to do, but for the time being I'm pretty pleased with the progress we made there. That's all for now, folks. Happy programming.